All right, don't mind all of the light coming in on my face right now. It is a beautiful day outside right now, and I would love nothing more than to be out there, but I'm making this video for you, primarily my children, but also my beautiful wife and the rest of the family and anybody else who cares. I just wanted to do a quick overview on what nutrition is, why it's important, what the Lord has to say about that in our lives, and some tips for eating and doing things healthier. All right, let's jump right into this. Nutrition. Can the kids watching this video pronounce that? Nutrition. Yep, that's right. The process of providing or obtaining the food necessary for health and growth. Obviously, other foods are delicious, but nutrition is the food that is necessary and made by me. All right, let's talk a little bit about the beginning, a brief overview, creation and the garden. You know what's interesting about this is the Lord provided everything Adam and Eve needed. Okay, they worked for it, but all of the stuff was there. It was provided, all of their food, everything was nutrition. He just wanted them to care for it. And then, of course, the fall, the population growth, the flood, the population regrowth, all of this kind of stuff. We see this timeline beginning here. And we get into ancient agricultural industrialization. So we're moving right along this timeline here. And I'm thinking like the pyramids, right? Egypt and making lots of food for different people. And now we're into modern agricultural industrialization. Can you tell this is a very brief overview? we're going from a lot of industrialization, right? Millions and millions of people, but not with the chemical compounds involved in the modern agricultural industrialization. Still millions of people, but now we're moving into a modern version of that in the lab. And we move from familial oversight. Okay, we as parents have the responsibility and oversight of our children, and then our children have the oversight of their children and their children and their children, so on, into government oversight. And how do governments make money? How do population control make money? They only make money off of taxes, off of what we, the people, produce. And so, why would they not want oversight? They want to keep us, quote, healthy. They want to keep us productive, is the important thing in this government. And so, they have an increased regulation, but also an increased profitability margin. And those two things can be at odds with one another. It's very hard to have the increased regulation whereby we're creating a population that is tax producing and productive, but also maintaining our profitability margin. And so, of course, with sin in the world going into that, enter into now greed and um, human behavior. And so, what's the deal here? What is truth? Does any of this actually matter? Why bother? The alternatives are often cheaper, tastier, easier to come by, and harder to quit. Harder to quit. Of course they are. So, why does this matter? Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. From the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. Why not try to eat and exercise and care for the body he has given us, if only that we may live 1 minute longer to lead another to him? That is the big why. Of course, we can eat whatever we want. All things are permissible, Paul says, but not all things are beneficial. So, is this a sin issue? That's a conviction between you and God. But why not try to do better? Why not try to eat healthier and do things so that we can prolong our life even by 1 more minute so that we can lead other people to Him? That is why we're here. He saved us and He left us here on earth to be an ambassador of Him to the people, to encourage other believers as we go along in the faith to continue on, keep fighting the good fight, and to bring other people into that kingdom. So why not do our very best as our sacrificial form of worship before God to honor him with everything, especially our bodies? All right, so with that in mind, let's take a deep dive look at nutrition. Nutrition is and is made of a process of eating and absorbing food that your body needs for nourishment. We're eating the food, and then hopefully our bodies are breaking that down and absorbing it, things that we need for nourishment. It involves this breaking of down into things called nutrients. Now, research shows proper nutrition can reduce your risk for diabetes, heart disease, stroke, et cetera, et cetera. It supports the healing process, whether you're recovering from surgery, a cold, case of stomach flu, your mental health, all of these things. And importantly, there are 6 major classes of nutrients, okay? 6 major classes of nutrients. 1, macronutrients. There are 3 of the 6 in the macronutrient category. Carbohydrates. Look at these green words here. Source of energy. Lipids, storing energy and digesting fat. Proteins, build up and repair muscle. They regulate your hormones. Then we have micronutrients. These are comprised of 2 parts. Vitamins, like vitamin A, C, and K. These are things that animals and plants make, vitamins, and minerals are substances that make their way into the animal and plant food through eating and absorbing, like calcium, magnesium, potassium. Okay, so that's 5 carbohydrates, lipid, proteins, vitamins, minerals. That's 5 of the 6 major classes of nutrients. And if you're my children and you're watching this, what is the most important thing after praying and giving your morning to the Lord that I always harp on every single morning? What are you supposed to go drink? Water. Water is the 6th major class, believe it or not, of nutrients. It rounds out the essential list of essential nutrients, and it supports nutrition in many ways, like carrying nutrients and oxygen to your cells. Think about it. You've been sleeping all night, 8+ hours. If you're my kids, at least 8+ hours. Can you go during the day 8+ hours without drinking anything? And we've been sleeping all night without that water. We need a glass of water when you wake up. Get that blood flowing, get this nutrients and oxygen to your cells, start that digestion process early. Let's go. This is nutrition, what it is and what it's made of. All right, where did I come from? Okay, you kids know how old I am. Where did I come from? Back in the day, this was the food pyramid they taught us. This was in our school textbooks. I want to point out the base of this pyramid here. Check this out. How many servings a day am I supposed to be having of all of these carbohydrates? Are you kidding me? 6 to 11 servings a day? Start with plenty of breads, cereals, rice, and pasta. Add 2 or 3 servings of the milk group. Are you kidding me? We wonder why 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later of doing this, we all struggle with obesity and are dying of heart attacks and stroke because of this food pyramid. And I get it, right? We're talked about previous couple slides, the modern industrialization. The whole point of government regulation is to preserve their citizens for the workforce to be able to produce and protect. And how do they do that? They have to regulate. So, this was the best they had at the time, all right? This is where we came from, okay? And now, where are we now? The inverted pyramid. Check this out. You see these grains down here at the bottom? Still the bottom of the pyramid, but inverted, very, very minimal. And now you should be having tons of these proteins and healthy fats and fruits and vegetables and things like that. I mean, it's just hilarious the difference of where we've come from. And I've got a great little video to show on this subject here.
It's upside down.
What?
Sir, the pyramid is upside down.
Turn the pyramid upside down. You can't be serious. That would put butter and fat at the top of the food pyramid. Get the president on the phone. Tell him to have some steak with his body.
All right. Yeah, that basically explains exactly where we came from here. Let's move on from the history of this slide. All right, this is important. I really want to spend some time on this. This is called the NOVA 4-part classification. This was, well, we'll talk about where this came from, but here are the 4 parts. This is the unprocessed, part 1, unprocessed or minimally processed foods is NOVA part 1. Part 2 are processed culinary ingredients, just the ingredients. And it's I want to point out here when it says milk in part 1, we're not talking store-bought milk. If you ever look at the back of the ingredient list on that store-bought milk, that is not unprocessed or minimally processed. We're talking raw or organic milk there. Number 2 is, just the ingredients, just the culinary ingredients. Number 3 is the processed foods. And number 3 is made up of part 1 and part 2. So that's what a processed food is. A processed food is part 1 and part 2. And then ultra processed foods, or UPFs, is part 4. So the NOVA 4-part classification system. This is how all our foods are broken up into and you can put all the foods in the world. Anything you eat can be put into one of these 4 categories. And I'd like to walk through this document. Here we have the NOVA food classification system right here. So this was invented by folks in Brazil. And you can see the link posted to read the full document here. But basically what I want to go through are the 4 types of NOVA food classifications. Number 1, unprocessed or minimally processed foods. Unprocessed or natural foods obtained directly from plants or animals and do not undergo any alteration following their removal from nature. Minimally processed foods or natural foods been submitted to cleaning. So for instance, you're catching a fish and you clean the fish. Okay, that's minimal processing. Removal of edible parts, blah, 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 blah. May subtract part of the food. This is key. This may subtract. When I clean the fish that I caught, I'm subtracting part of the food, but I do not add anything. This is group number 1. Some examples: natural, packaged, cut, chilled, frozen vegetables, fruits, potatoes, and other roots and tubers. Bulk and packaged grains, fresh or pasteurized vegetable juices with no added sugar or substances, grains of wheat, other cereals, grits, flakes, flour, blah, blah, blah. Dried or fresh pasta, and this is important that what this is giving an example of is not, this is like homemade pasta, not pasta from the store. Okay, we'll get into that in a second. Okay, number 2, oils, fats, salt, and sugar. This is called processed culinary ingredients. This is specifically just ingredients. Use these in small amounts for cooking and adding to your foods. Examples are oils from seeds, nuts, and fruits, butter, lard, molasses, cane or beet, honey, that kind of stuff. Combining 2 of any of these, such as that, would be salted butter. Okay, the golden rule: always prefer natural or minimally processed foods and freshly made dishes and meals to ultra processed. Here's number 3, processed foods. Processed foods are products manufactured by industry with the use of salt, sugar, oil, or other substances, basically everything from group 2, added to natural or minimally processed groups, number 1, to preserve and make them more. Okay, so you have group 1, you have group 2, and if you combine anything from group 1 and group 2, now you have processed foods. So when I salt my fish that I'm drying, when I salt my beef jerky that I'm drying, it is now processed foods. They're derived directly from foods and recognized as versions of the original food. They are usually consumed as part of or as a side dish in culinary preparations made using natural or minimally processed foods. They have 2 or 3 ingredients that you recognize. Okay, examples are canned, bottled legumes or vegetables in salt brine, like pickles. Think of pickles. Tomato extract. Think of fruits and sugar without the added antioxidants. Think of the beef jerky I was just referencing. salted nuts, the canned fish, salted fish, this kind of stuff. Basically, group 3, processed, that's okay in small dosage. Anything from group 1 and group 2, when you add it together, is processed 3. And finally, the ultra processed food, the UPF. These are industrial formulations made entirely or mostly from substances extracted from foods, derived from food constituents, or synthesized in laboratories from food substrates or other organic sources. Think like chicken nuggets. Flavor enhancers, colors, several food additives used to make the product hyper palatable. You know what that means? Tasty. To make it tasty, this is what we're doing. Where manufacturing techniques include extrusion, molding, deep pre-processing by frying. Beverages may be ultra-processed. Group food ones are a small portion of, or even totally absent from, UPFs. Example, fatty, sweet, savory, salty packaged snacks. Cookies, ice creams, chocolates, obviously, any sodas or carbonated drinks, energy sports drinks, any canned or package or any dehydrated instant stuff like that. Sweetened because it has to go through the processing. Sweetened flavored yogurts, including the fruit yogurts. Any dairy, including chocolate milk. Also, any dairy plain milk that you get. If you're getting milk from the big box store, guess what? It's ultra processed. Sweetened juices, margarines and spreads. Pre-prepared packaged meat, fish and vegetables. Pre-prepared pizza and pasta. Pre-prepared burgers. Basically, all this is saying is anything that's, it's already made and it's in the store. Nuggets, fish sticks, that kind of stuff. Other animal products from the remnants. Packaged breads. Okay, if my homemade bread is molding on day 3, that's a good sign. If the packaged bread can get from the factory to the store, and that's taking weeks, and then it sits in the store and you can have it in your shelf for the next month before it goes moldy, that's ultra processed bread. Baked products, hydrogenated, blah, blah, blah. Breakfast cereals. Okay, you saw cereals in group 1. What this is talking about is any actual breakfast cereals. What that's talking about in group 1 is not what you're thinking of when it says breakfast cereals. This is what you're thinking of. Ultra processed food is breakfast cereals. Instant formulas and drinks, meal replacement shakes, pastries, alcoholic beverages, etc. So what's interesting is in the alcoholic category, this is specifically the alcohol, the what we call spirits, or the actual liquor, versus beer is up here in processed foods, because beer is just a combination of group 1 and group 2. I'm not saying that's better, that you should drink more beer, but if you're going to choose one or the other, go with something that's not a UPF. Okay, hope that helps and makes sense. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right, so here we just have a wonderful, easy to see chart explaining that huge PDF we just went over. So this is the easy chart. You notice that they get from green all the way up to red, and down here at the bottom, they go from increasing level of processing. The more hands touching it, the more chemicals, the more factories, the harder it is for you to make this category Nova 4 in your home. So Nova 1, the unprocessed or minimally processed foods, this stuff, if you can grow it, if you can raise it as an animal, this stuff is here. As soon as you begin preserving it, it moves over into here. I know this says soy milk, but this would also just be any milk. Any milk you find in the big box store, any not real milk you find is made from that. Now, in this case, the oat milk is made from the oats and, some other things here from the culinary ingredients. So it's not bad, but we want to stay in the green and or the yellow. And I know putting those two together gets you into the orange. So just be cautious. There's obviously, in some cases like the sodium here in number 3 can have a lot of, the sodium, the soy sauce. You hear that Freudian slip? The soy sauce can be full of sodium, and that could make it very well into a Nova 4 ultra processed food just because of the preservation. And when we're talking about cheeses and things like that, or bread, remember, we're talking about freshly made bread, cured meats, artesian cheeses. We're not talking about Kraft singlets, which would be down here in this category, or Wonder Bread, or any store-bought bread. We're not talking about that stuff. In category 3, this is stuff that if you leave out on your counter without refrigerating or drying, it's going to go bad because guess what? It's organic. If your stuff here doesn't go bad, it's because it's full of preservatives and things that don't, they're made from the food stuffs, but they're not food itself. Okay, so hopefully this is a very easy to understand, easy to see chart. And one more thing here on the number 2 here, we have a lot of spices and mixed ingredients that we like to put in our meats and things like that. Those actually fall into Nova 4. Only things that you could harvest yourself, or a human could harvest themselves without the help of chemicals, are in the processed culinary ingredient. Grinding, milling, pressing, refining, like squishing the olives, refining the honey, refining the wheat into flour, those kinds of things. If it's a bunch of chemical additive, you'd be surprised at what is in some of the spices. You'd be surprised at if it's not a wheel of delicious Parmesan and you get that green bottle of Parmesan, look in the back and see how much of that is actually just cellulose. You know what cellulose is? That's wood chips. That's wood chips from the Sitka spruce tree up in Alaska. Okay, so hopefully this is a very clear and easy to read example of what we're shooting for here. All right, here is the bottom line. If we can't define an ingredient on the packaging, if we don't have access to an ingredient in our home, in other words, we'd have to go to a chemist or a lab to get the ingredient, we should not be putting it in our body as a food nutrient. If we can't define it, if we don't have access to those ingredients in a normal home, we shouldn't be putting it in our body. If someone can't farm or ranch this, I wrote this originally to say if I can't farm or ranch, okay, I can't farm or ranch half the things. But if people, normal human beings can't farm or ranch what we're about to eat and prepare it in a normal household, we should not be eating it. Well, the Lord has made our bodies incredible and resilient at processing chemicals and preservatives. It's only now in the last 50 years where we've had the ability to study these long-term effects. We've, even create these foodstuffs like this that are now, the now emerging research on our own selves is all negative. That's why they flipped the pyramid. That's why there's so much marketing and hype and commercialism on healthy food. And I'm not saying you need to jump into any of those. A lot of that can be schemes to take advantage of that. So be careful of what you decide to go out and buy for sure. But just the simple stuff. If we can't define it, if we don't have access to that ingredient, if we can't farm or ranch it, we shouldn't be eating it. Why not honor him by doing better? Like my mom, right here, this big old beautiful category 1 food product right there is what that is. Gorgeous. Next slide, please. All right, some final tips and takeaways. Everything's up on the slide for you here. Practice makes perfect. Consider cutting out different foods from Nova Group 1 and 2 and having the whole family select their favorite kinds to put into a regular menu. Just cut out the pieces, put it in a hat, shake it up, make your favorite menu out of all those things. Yes, it's more expensive and it's less readily available and it takes more work planning and putting together, but don't give in. Anything worth doing does. It all takes that hard work. And don't sweat it, okay? Celebrate the birthdays with cake. Trust me, when I walk through the Hagen's aisle and I see that unicorn slice of cake sitting there and it's calling my name and it's got those layers of just delicious goodness and the little imaginary birthday candle on it that I'm, celebrating myself with. I'm buying that. Okay? Celebrate the wins. Don't turn down food at a friend's home. Don't be rude. Or another country. I'm thinking, mission trips. Eat the chicken feet they put in front of you. But everything in moderation. Okay? So don't, this isn't a hard and fast. Live before the Lord in the freedom of the law, but remember, our bodies are temple to the Holy Spirit. Continue improving, raw and real. Be able to identify the plant or animal that it is. Combine it with ingredients you can also identify from group 2, and even use AI to come up with some wonderful recipe selections. Check this out. ChatGPT example, Nova 1 and 2 menus. Make me a breakfast menu. Breakfast, breakfast, breakfast. Make me a lunch menu. Lunch, lunch, lunch. Make me a dinner menu. Dinner, dinner, dinner. Key rule. Thank you, ChatGPT. If you can recognize the food as something that once grew, walked, swam, or was milked, and you're only adding basic kitchen ingredients, you're staying firmly in the Nova 1 and 2 territory. And guess what? Helpful ChatGPT. Build me a 7-day Nova 1 and 2 meal plan. Okay, easy. Again, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be less readily available. It's going to take more work, but the long-term and sometimes even immediate effects of this is totally worth it. And even if you don't feel or experience just this amazing cleanse or a high from eating something healthy or whatever, even if you don't, we're doing it as our sacrificial form of worship before the Lord for that. For you have formed me, my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, O God, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Psalm 139, 13, and 15. Thank you for watching and paying attention this entire 30-minute presentation. I hope you learned something. I hope you're motivated to make a change, even a little change in your life daily and for those in your care. And I know I'm looking forward to treating my body as a product of his creation and something to give back to him sacrificially. So thank you again for this time. Thank you. Any questions, feel free to reach out, and let's do this together. Let's crush it.